Hello, and welcome to today's episode of On the Rocks. Today I'm excited to welcome Dr. Doug Wicks, the Program Director at the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy, otherwise known as ARPA-E. His focus at ARPA-E is on waste-to-energy technologies. Doug joins ARPA-E from Ameris, a French industrial minerals production and processing company, where he was most recently the Director of Transformational and External Innovation. At Ameris, he developed an innovation network comprised of academic, research organizations, startups, and strategic partners. Before joining Ameris, Doug worked in a variety of roles at several startup companies focused on innovative materials, and he began his career at Bayer Corporation, where he ultimately became Vice President of Research for the Coatings and Colorants Division. Doug has a BS in Chemistry from North Dakota State University and a PhD in Polymer Science and Engineering from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Pour a glass of fizzy water, and let's jump in. Doug, thank you so much for joining us here on the Rocks today, and really excited to dig into some interesting topics with you on ARPA-E and geologic hydrogen and getting people excited about coming into the mining sector. But first, I have to start with the most important question, which is, what are you drinking today for this episode?
Well, at the episode, since I'm at the office, the federal government, I'm having probably a drink that really represents what I do, and that's a nice carbonated mineral water. And it kind of brings together a lot of the topics I'm looking at, and it's very enjoyable. It's in a green bottle, and I won't advertise the name of it. So,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, as a government employee. Well, I will, because I would love to get sponsored also by La Croix. So I'm choosing to drink the guava fizzy water today. So you and I will be very well hydrated throughout the
yeah.
episode. But as you pointed out, you're drinking mineral carbonated water. I am not. I missed that. I am just drinking regular carbonated water. So,
Okay.
well, I think, Doug, people who are listening, I know for me, it was kind of new. They may have never even really heard of ARPA-E. So I wonder if you could just give folks a quick overview, like what is ARPA-E? What does the acronym mean, and what do you all do?
ARPA-E is the Advanced Research Programs Agency of the Department of Energy. Many people may have heard of DARPA, which is the Defense Program, Advanced Research, and ARPA-E was created somewhat in the mold of DARPA. And we have a fairly straightforward mission, that really came from the time of formation, which is number one, decrease energy-related imports to the United States. We were founded when we imported about 30% of our hydrocarbon resources, and that was considered a national threat. The second part of it is to focus on areas that increase the efficiency of energy use, and then at the same time decreasing the environmental impact of energy generation and use in the United States. And so it's fairly wide open, and what we look at within these programs that we run, which really cover the entire energy space. I mean, it would take too long to talk about all of our projects. But we're really looking at areas that, with a small investment, overall small investment from ARPA-E, we can have a transformative impact on a technology field. So we look at ourselves as catalyzing energy changes, and we've done a fair amount in the last, 14 years that we've been in existence within that area. I'm quite proud of our accomplishments.
Yeah, you guys are doing some really cool cutting edge stuff and supporting teams that are. I mean, I'm really amazed by some of the programs that y'all are behind in terms of how forward looking and really science focused they are in the space.
Yeah, and the other distant difference that we have is really the mantra of, if it works, will it matter? So we do have a large emphasis on commercializing technology that we bring forward, because we're really not going to have that impact on, of our research on, within the economy unless somebody is making money off of it. So we actually have a pretty big emphasis on that, which differs from a lot of other research funding you see coming from the federal government.
Yeah. Well, and on that topic, you and I were having a conversation about something totally different, about innovation and decarbonization in the mining space. And somehow geologic hydrogen came up, and this is like a passion of yours or a new or an interest, at least something that you love to, in your words, go down the rabbit hole. And I was not familiar with geologic hydrogen at all before you talked to me about it. And so I really wanted in this episode to have you give us a geologic hydrogen 101. Like, first of all, what is it? Why do we care, right? And what do you think is so cool about geologic hydrogen?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It kind of comes out of my interest in mining, and people ask me, well, what does it have to do with mining? And I look at them and say, well, it comes from rocks, and mining people are rocks people.
True.
But it's an interest I got really drawn into by one of our ARPA-E fellows, Emily Ednack, who was here, tried to convince me I should help her with researching the possibility of geologic hydrogen. And slowly she sucked me down the rabbit hole
Mm,
of geologic hydrogen. And I'm actually amazed at what's taking place. And the Earth naturally generates geologic hydrogen.
mm,
So there's a lot of subsurface activities that lead to hydrogen formation. And there is not just a little bit being formed, but there are billions of tons being formed in
mm,
the subsurface. And this is coming from deep earth reactions, radioactive decay. This is where our helium comes from, as
mm,
well as geologic hydrogen. It comes from the oxidation of iron in the subsurface that generates hydrogen. And it's an interesting field because all the geologists know about it. All the, what I would call the geobiochemists know about it
mm.
because the subsurface is actually the microbes down there eat hydrogen for their energy source. And so everybody knows about it. And there's fairly good discussions. And you talk with them and say, did you ever try to find concentrated stuff? And they're like, why would we do that? And then, I would follow that up with, did you ever talk to an engineer about this? And they're like, no.
Yeah. Don't
Why
talk to.
would we do that? So, and if you look at the calculations that are out there's the potential. I like the number, it's 10 to the 15th tons of potential resource, which is millions of billions of tons,
Wow.
um, which really is a amount of potential power that exceeds fossil fuels on Earth. So it's a very interesting opportunity,
Yeah.
but truly a white space.
Yeah, because and I'm going to ask you a specific question about this, but I was tracking a lot of other kinds of hydrogen in terms of what industry is starting to look at, but I had never heard of this opportunity as something that could be commercial. And when I started looking and doing some research into this to prepare for today, why are there are all these different colors of hydrogen? There's like blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, geologic hydrogen is white hydrogen, right? I think is what they like. Why do people talk about it that way?
There are many colors in the rainbow, and it goes all the way from, and I don't know where it came from. I think the green hydrogen people came out to say this was
Like
clean.
environmentally friendly green, right? Is what they
Yeah,
meant.
and then talked about the traditional sources of hydrogen, which is made from natural gas or coal. And the natural gas hydrogen they called gray hydrogen to
Oh,
put a downcast on it. And hydrogen from coal is brown hydrogen. So then we have to continue the rainbow that petrochemical industry said, well, we can capture the carbon from hydrogen formation from natural gas. So we're going to call that blue hydrogen,
oh,
which
okay.
is another color. And, not to be outdone, people have come up with the idea of pink hydrogen. And pink hydrogen is hydrogen that's generated using nuclear energy. Then white hydrogen was quoted as being naturally occurring hydrogen, such as there actually are natural deposits of hydrogen that you can drill down to and come out. And that's been called white hydrogen. And then you have gold hydrogen, which is another one coming from microbial digestion of hydrocarbons.
Hmm.
Um, And lately, I hate to say it, one of the people I know well came up with orange hydrogen as the type of hydrogen that we stimulate. So that rather than natural occurrences, it's looking at saying, how do we make it come up faster? So there's a whole rainbow. I tend to look at it and say, if it comes from the earth, let's call it geohydrogen.
Okay.
And, really rated on the base of its greenhouse gas potential and not by some silly rainbow.
Yeah. Again, I don't know that I'm trying to think of any other resource where it's color coded like that. Yeah, I thought that was really funny.
There's actually several more in there that I've missed, and so I don't.
We'll have to do a graphic of the different color
Yes.
codes for all the different hydrogen types. Now, and you mentioned some of these concentrated deposits where you are able to drill, and there's a large one in Mali, right? Which was another thing that I was surprised at.
Yeah, I mean, there are several high concentrations that have been found, and the one in Mali, outside of the capital of Bamako, it was found while they were looking for water. So they were drilling a water well, and the operator lit a cigarette, and it was the last thing he did. And they initially thought they had natural gas, and a French company came down to see if it was worth exploring, and they found out it was not natural gas. It was 98% pure hydrogen.
Wow.
And they've since continued to explore there and have found a reasonable sized resource, not quite big enough to be technically exploited for the international market. There is potential for local use. And so that kind of raised everybody's interest when you began to find it. And there has been a lot of work done mapping where hydrogen has been found. And there actually is lower amounts and trace amounts of hydrogen found all over the world in geologic deposits. Some of them are at high concentrations, but those tend not to be in places where oil and gas is found.
Oh, okay. So it's in non-petroleum areas is where
So it's really a hard rock phenomenon.
Where you say this really connects more with mining than it does with oil and gas.
Yes.
Yeah. So are there folks in the mining industry that are looking at this, or who's kind of moving geologic hydrogen forward from an expert perspective?
It is a very new topic. I can say that a number of mining companies know about it and are now interested. A number of oil companies now know about it and are interested, but historically there hasn't been much work in the area. There's only a couple of academic labs in the world that have looked at it. And, really there's, I'd say, about a half a dozen now, what I would call wildcatters in the United States, looking for high concentrations of hydrogen in the subsurface based on their own proprietary activities. And also, the USGS right now has just started a program under Jeff Ellis to see, can we develop predictive maps of where to look for hydrogen, similar to what they've done before with natural gas.
Okay. And where do you see the potential future for the industry? Is it tied in with kind of the green economy and carbon reduction, or where do you see this headed, even at this early stage?
The expectation, or I should say, I don't know if I'd say my expectation, my wish. What was the classic line out of South Pacific? You got to have a dream, because if you don't have a dream, it can never come true. So in my dream, I would say it's really a new primary energy source for mankind. So unlike the colored hydrogens that are out there, we're not changing one type of energy into hydrogen.
Okay.
This could be a primary energy source, and if the price is correct, it could compete directly with hydrocarbons without having the CO2 output. One of the big challenges with the what I would say are the colored hydrogens, and so if we look at green hydrogen, for example, is people don't realize how much infrastructure is required to make green hydrogen from the electrolysis of water.
Mm.
It's all done with electricity. And if we want to make it green, we have to do it with green electricity or renewable, which raises a lot of questions about the expense of doing it. And really what I look at is the material impact of that green energy generation, of that green electricity. To meet the IEA's, or the International Energy Association's, forecast for hydrogen in 2050, we would have to build as much renewable electricity generation as we have total energy, electrical generation on Earth right now.
Oh, wow.
We need 8 terawatts of capacity just to make hydrogen from intermittent sources. And that alone, just the electricity generation, would consume 50 to 100 million tons of critical raw material, critical minerals.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a lot of mining to make all of this stuff to generate that.
It's a lot of mining. The electrodes tend to be things like platinum group elements or rare earth elements or nickel zirconia composites. And so it's really a very major mining contribution to do that. So my expectation is, can we come up with a hydrogen source which is not an energy carrier and a primary energy source?
Very cool. And is that why ARPA-E is kind of looking at this, or what kind of got ARPA-E into the geologic hydrogen space? Is it that the energy potential?
Yeah, it's the energy and environmental potential. And we do have vast resources which could lead to the generation of hydrogen. So there's, from a mineral deposit standpoint, we could generate a lot of hydrogen if we choose to, we can master the process, but we have the required ore bodies to do this. And the potential, when you talk about billions of tons of hydrogen, you keep in mind when I say a billion tons, if we had 5 billion tons of hydrogen, that's the total energy demand for mankind on Earth per year. So when we talk about millions of tons, I mean millions of billions of tons, that means we really have a good chance of unlimited power. So it's a gamble. It's a high risk gamble, which is really what ARPA-E is for.
Right. Well, and I guess, I should back up a little bit, because some listeners may not know, like, how do you turn hydrogen of any color of the rainbow into energy? Like, how is it actually used and converted into usable power?
There's a number of methods that are out. I mean, right now there's 2 primary uses of hydrogen, and that's to make fertilizer. Ammonia fertilizer is made from that, and then in oil refining to adjust the composition of oil. To turn it into power, you have fuel cell technologies, which basically take hydrogen and combine it with oxygen to generate water. And in that process, they make electricity. So you'll hear about a lot of hydrogen-powered cars. That's typically what they're looking at. You can also burn hydrogen in a turbine like you would natural gas to generate electricity. But what's really interesting is a lot of the other very heavy industrial uses for hydrogen. It's got a large future in decarbonizing steel production. So instead of using coal to burn off the oxygen from iron oxide, you use hydrogen to reduce it.
Okay.
So there's a number of plants being put up in the world right now to do this process of taking hydrogen to convert iron ore into iron or steel. We also see it being useful in other industrial uses at high temperature for this. And there's also a lot of fuel uses expected, because you can take hydrogen plus carbon dioxide and turn it into a low carbon or no carbon fuel. So that we've taken carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, turned it into jet fuel, for example. And this way, when it burns, it doesn't add CO2 to the world. It doesn't get rid of it, but it doesn't add any.
This is reminding me me of some conversations I've had on the space mining side, where when I talk to folks working in the commercial space sector, they say the first thing that will really be mined in space is ice, right? To break it down into hydrogen and oxygen for
Hydrogen.
propulsion, right? In order to move around space, that essentially you have to set up like space gas stations that will be hydrogen powered, essentially.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. If you look at a lot of the research around geologic hydrogen,
Mhm.
it was paid for by NASA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of work done by NASA, and of all things in the astrobiology space, because they're looking at saying, could hydrogen be a different fuel or food source for microbes that we don't imagine? So the astrobiology group has spent a lot of time looking at the reaction of hydrogen plus CO2.
Hmm.
That's an energy source for microbes.
If we
Um,
find alien microbes, or if we
if we
bring,
find alien microbes, I mean, could this be a indication of alien microbes?
that's
Um,
right. We got to feed all those alien microbes out there and make them grow bigger so they can, attack the
yeah.
spaceship. Yeah. Well, it's so cool. And so, how did you get into this, Doug? Because you've got, I mean, ARPA-E is a really interesting program, and what you've been able to do within it. So, how did you end up here?
How did I end up in RPE? It's kind of a long story. I have many phases to my career, and you really decided at my point in career I wanted to make an impact on society and the environment. And RPE was a great place to bring my very diverse
Hmm.
experience background. I've been in plastics companies, I've been in academia, I've been in startup companies, and even did a stint in a mining company,
Oh,
um,
goodness.
which taught me enough about mining to be dangerous
Yeah.
in the space. But I really came here to say, to see, can I make an impact really at a global scale
Hmm.
by promoting research? And it's something I'm very passionate about, to come back and say that the next generation faces phenomenal challenges in the energy space.
Hmm.
And I think materials are going to be key to the transformation. If we take a look at all the green energy systems we want to transfer to, they're all based on mining.
Yeah, and the reason I find your background and how you got here so interesting is because you're also turning it back around. And I know you're doing a lot of outreach, really to some not typical or traditional students to encourage them to take a look at the mining industry and see if they can contribute or solve challenges. If you could share with us a little bit about what that program's doing.
Yeah, it's an effort I started last year, to go out and talk about the future of mining and the challenges that are there, that really address the environmental, societal, and economic concerns around mining. We need really big changes to take place. And I really feel that we need more than just our traditional mining groups to
Mhm.
contribute to this. I mean, if you take a look at our mining developments over the last 2,000 years, we essentially just got bigger hammers and bigger trucks, and we just move stuff around more. And the question is, with the amount of minerals we need for the energy transformation, we need some really radical changes in the way we do mining. So I really made a decision to, as I was called on at a dinner on Tuesday night in New York, to really become an evangelist about the need to transform the mining industries. And so go out and spend full days at all types of universities, not just the mining schools, but the heavy engineering schools, to say these are the problems, and don't think about it as mining. I mean, this is really engineering challenges, with great places for innovation, and the payback is amazing for
Mhm.
these. And it's quite interesting because I don't think most people in the world, or in the venture capital world, or the engineering world, realize where their metals come
Right.
from. you
Yeah.
know, they're just like assume that they just appear.
Yeah.
Um,
The
maybe a
magic
unicorn
magic
delivers it.
Yeah, the magic lithium fairy is just going to show up and sprinkle
Yep,
it.
sprinkle it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so really coming back, and so I structure my discussions with them to first talk about what I call the abyss, which is the amount of minerals we need for the transformation to take place. And, and juxtaposition that with what we're producing today. And there's a mismatch, we don't have enough. And so really to come back and say, challenge these people to say, what are the big things we can do, transformative, to really change the mining industry to pull not only the machinery, but the entire process into the 21st century.
Yeah. And what kind of feedback or response do you get when you pose that challenge?
I get a lot of feedback, a lot of very positive feedback, and a lot of interest. And a lot of people, again, in the top institutions in the country taking it very seriously. So this is going back to schools that used to be involved in mining and think about it, but aren't anymore. So the MITs, the Stanfords, the Columbias of the world, come back and say, you've got the best minds in the country. Focus on this. And it's been enough. I've been called back to several of them to give follow-on discussions. And the proof will, and as well as going out to the traditional mining areas. I've had great meetings at a Colorado School of Mines, at Missouri Science and Tech, and looking forward to going to many more. But the real proof is going to say that I don't have the answers. And so the proof is really going to be them coming up with approaches to do this. And I don't think they'll come up with the approaches to do it unless somebody first points out the need and then asks them what to do.
No, I think that's such a great point because talk a lot on this podcast about the fact that the mining and exploration industry does a great job of talking to itself inside the little bubble, but doesn't do a great job of going out to people that are outside the industry, universities included, and kind of reaching out and engaging and trying to pull people in to bring creative ideas and, as you said, kind of transformative or catalytic ideas into the space.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and it also comes back into the world, of venture investments. And this is a key topic that really has to be brought forward. Is we don't have an ecosystem to support mining startups or mining technology startup companies. I think on certain parts of it, the junior miners have their exploration people have their background places to do it. But if we want to bring out new technology, there's not that ecosystem that you find around robotics or medicine or digital activities that you can find support and funding to carry these through. So a lot of my message is also going out and really educating investors. To say this energy transition you're so interested in is not going to happen unless we have metals. And many of them are aghast.
I can personally vouch for that, having done the prospector pitch for a lot of VCs and investor groups. And you either have folks that as a tech company, right, that works in the mining space, they're either completely unaware of the fact of how mining and technology interact and kind of where those gaps are, or they think mining is going to stay this very small industry from a total market valuation perspective, right? And trying to get people to look at, but where is mining going to have to be for the next 20 years in order to supply the world with all this metal, right? It's not going to stay such a small industry. And don't you want to get in on the ground floor, right? But it's a tough conversation because with most of those investor groups, you are starting at zero, right? Very little familiarity or kind of understanding about that gap.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for going out and trying to rope them in, get them to pay attention.
As I say, it's very well received and going out, and I think hopefully I wake up the right researchers who can really make a big difference. That's going to have an impact by 2050 because we need it.
Yeah. need it like today, right? Today or tomorrow, not by the.
That's the other thing that when you talk to people outside of the mining industry, they're aghast at how slow
Yes.
takes place. There were discussions when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, which gives credits for domestically produced metals and batteries. And people were asking, well, how many nickel mines are going to open next year? And it's like, no.
Let's go through the permitting timeline just to start with, and then the financing timeline, and then it is.
I'll stay away from permitting. That's a policy issue.
No, but to the length of time, right?
Yeah.
That these aren't projects that you can just turn on or off in a few months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't happen quickly. Yeah. Well, and so how has the mining industry reacted to some of your initiatives and your outreach? Have you seen similar positive engagement on that side?
It's been interesting to watch over the last couple of years, the number of people from mining industries that are now answering my phone calls. It started out with, I started out with really cautious engagement to now, I would say we're having full engagement with some of the largest mining companies in the world. They are it's dawning on them that the volume of material they have to supply cannot be supplied using current practices. The environmental impact is too high. Their social license is not there. And very open to engagement. We had a kickoff for one of my programs, the MINER program, which is a nice acronym for Mining Innovations for Negative Emissions Resource Recovery, where we're focusing on using CO2 in the mining process to hopefully reduce energy and increase yields while getting rid of CO2. And at that meeting, I was really very happy to have 11 different mining companies present, mostly as partners with our teams in this. And so we had, some of the largest companies in the world. Actually, stay away from the names. The top two in the world were there. We also had Ron Rimmelman from the American Exploration and Mining Association there to give us a talk. Tesla gave us a talk and a tour of the facilities. And it was really, it was very satisfying to see the input of all the mining companies and interest. They're looking at it saying we need innovations now more than ever.
Sure. That's wonderful to hear. And on that note, my last question for every guest, with everything that you're doing and everything that you're seeing, if you could wave a magic wand and change or improve one thing about the mining industry just overnight, pure magic, no work needed, what would you change?
No work needed. That is a very challenging question. I would have to say that really, how do we bring the full technology solutions to mining in a way that we can use the massive computing power we have to speed permitting? To look at it, I just had a discussion with the USGS about digitizing the 100,000 plus maps they have, and can we overlay those with hydrology maps and really not only come up with where is the best stuff, but even choose up front where to mine. So I'd have to say, if I could change anything, magic wand would be to have the ferry come down and sprinkle the dust on the locations that are easiest to mine.
There you go. Put an X on the map for all those.
Yes.
Yeah.
To give us a map of, say, dig here.
That's a good. Nobody has ever come up with that answer, and now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah. Why would that not be the one thing you'd want a magic wand for? Absolutely.
Yes. I want to be able to draw X marks the spot.
It'll be very efficient exploration right there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doug, for joining us on the Rocks. And I really look forward to keeping up with you and hearing more about what ARPA-E and the MINER program, what y'all are doing. And thank you again for going out and carrying the message about how important it is to get new ideas, new people, new companies and investors to take a look at the space. So cheers to you with our with our fizzy water, if not a cocktail
Yeah.
on that one.
Cheers.
Cheers.